Good morning, Central Kentucky. This is Sandra Leslie White coming to you live from WJMM Studios just outside of Lexington, Kentucky, and shouting out to all of you around the country, WJMM.com and Facebook Live this morning. Good morning. Have you ever been chosen out of a crowd? Have you ever been chosen? Maybe it was in a childhood game. You remember that Red Rover? Let Sandra come over. You were chosen to be on the team. You know, it feels good to be chosen. Worthy of doing something special. I've mentioned numerous times that I watch The Chosen online, the TV series, the online TV series. You can get the app. Get it on your phone. It's being crowdfunded now. Episodes for season 2 are being developed. It's awesome. It's all about the life of Jesus and the Gospels. The other night I was reviewing one episode. I reviewed season 1 over and over. Can't get enough. And it opened with a scene of Jacob and Jacob's well. In Genesis, it then ends with a scene of the same well in John 4. But one line caught my attention when a sojourner asked Jacob why he chose to serve a God whose promises don't come about for centuries. He's invisible. And he had just discovered and found out that he wrestled with Jacob and hurt his hip. Why would he choose that God? Well, Jacob said, I did not choose him. He chose me. All right, so the title of the message today is Fear Not, You Are Chosen. And we're looking at Isaiah 41 today as we traverse through the Bible on the Fear Not series. Isaiah has quite a few fear nots or do not be afraids, and we're going to look at one today. Isaiah 41, 8-14. If you're just tuning in, this is Sandra Leslie White. Title of the message, Fear Not, You Are Chosen. So let's look at this in Isaiah 41, New American Standard Version this morning, 8-14. Let's listen to this awesome truth about you. But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendants of Abraham, my friend, you whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from its remotest parts and said, you are my servant. I have chosen you and not rejected you. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Behold, all those who are angered at you will be shamed and dishonored. Those who contend with you will be as nothing and will perish. You will seek those who quarrel with you, but will not find them. Those who war with you will be as nothing and non-existent. For I am the Lord your God, who upholds your right hand, who says to you, do not fear, I will help you. Do not fear, you worm Jacob, you men of Israel. I will help you, declares the Lord, your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. All right, so there we are in the next fear not. There are several in there of fear nots, at least 2 I know. And I was going to split this message up, but I thought I would just combine the fear nots between verse 8 and 14 of chapter 41. Because I think it makes a remarkable statement about the fact that you and I, Israel, God's people who hear his voice, who know his name, who do what you can to follow him, says, I chose you. You did not choose me. So, isn't that amazing? I mean, the God of the universe would choose you, would choose me. And the difference between the choosing, when Jesus walked the earth, we'll look at that in John 15:19, he says, I chose you. Well, as a matter of fact, let's look at that even as we go through this fear not passage. In John 15:19, Jesus said, if you were of the world would love its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Ooh, okay. But Jesus says we're really not of this world, first of all. Isn't that great news? I mean, we're just citizens of a better place. We're citizens of heaven. Once we have surrendered, to Jesus and do our best, to follow him and allow him, who has chosen us to take us along the pathway of life, to get rid of all that destroys us, and to give us an abundant life. That he says that if you were of the world would love its own. But because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, thank God, we are not of this world. Therefore, the world hates you. So I think this whole idea, and we really see it clearly from Genesis to Revelation, this idea of God choosing us. And in the Old Testament particularly, he chooses his own servants. He seems to identify them in a personal way from Genesis, all the way to Malachi. But he also talks about his people as a people he has chosen, a nation he has chosen, and specifically Israel. So we are looking at the Hebrew people collectively and individually in the Old Testament. And so he makes it clear that in Isaiah over and over that we're not to fear. Israel's not to fear what's happening, not to fear the division of the kingdom, not to fear the fierce enemies in pagan nations around them, because he has chosen them. So think about that for a minute. I mean, if we're chosen, then we are on the same team as Yahweh, as Jesus, and we are in his fold, as the shepherd calls his sheep. It's his job to protect the sheep. It's his job to graze and feed and water the sheep. It's the sheep who hear the shepherd's voice, follow him, and know that wherever we're going, and sometimes it's in the darkness, sometimes it's in the fog, sometimes it's impossible to discern where are we going, but we trust the shepherd's voice. We know that we are chosen. It's not a matter of choosing him as much as it is that he chose us. So when you think about being chosen, you think about the idea of a leader choosing his team. Again, I'm emphasizing the obvious. But when you realize that you're chosen by God, and you really can't fight it. I mean, there was a whole lot of fight in me, I'll tell you that, before I gave my life, surrendered my life to Christ. I lived a pretty worldly life there in Houston, Texas. And so I really understand the struggle of our own independence, and then that surrendering point to the dependence on God. And then this, I think, epiphany, really, this awakening to, oh my gosh, really this is as Calvin would say, John Calvin, our great theologian, our little Geneva guy, our Presbyterian founder, essentially, of Calvinism and Presbyterianism and so on. Anyway, he would say that it's an irresistible draw, that once we are really aware that there is someone bigger than us that is interested in our life and is drawing us unto himself, once we realize that, it becomes an irresistible force where you just go toward God. And of course, he surrounds us with a cloud of witnesses. We know this from Hebrews. It's so great a cloud of witnesses that we're to throw off, whatever sin entangles us and run the race with endurance that is before us in Christ Jesus. So there's this marvelous reality that as God chooses us and we become aware of that, then we see there's this cloud of witnesses surrounding us that are, urging us onward and loving us unconditionally. And we're beginning to see that this isn't really our choosing. I mean, really, I think when we choose, the longer I am with the Lord, the more I realize that what my choices are compared to his, they're really lame compared to his choices. I don't always understand his choices, but I trust his guidance and the fact that he chose me, and he is responsible for keeping me on the path. Sometimes that path seems very, as I said earlier, dark and foggy, and it's not clear. But we know that he's the one guiding us. So I think the critical part here is when he says, you, in verse 8 of Isaiah 41, you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendants of Abraham, my friend, you who I have taken from the ends of the earth. Wow. So he's taken them from the ends of the earth. That just feels good. I have chosen you and not rejected you. Do not fear, I am with you. And I love this. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And then he goes on to say that all those who are angered at you will be shamed and dishonored. Those who contend with you will be as nothing and will perish. You will seek those who quarrel with you and will not find them. Those who are at war with you will be as nothing and non-existent. Have you discovered this over time? That bit, knowing who you are, knowing that you can walk quietly through the war zone of life. There are times we have to stand up. There are times to lift up our voice. We're human. We're going to respond. But the reality of it is there's an overwhelming sense of peace that takes us through the chaos of our culture today. And I speak to that from the COVID-19 crisis all the way through the Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter and the riots and the protests and all of it. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be war. There's always something that's chaotic in our lives. If it's not in our own household, it's certainly in our community and in our culture. So he is giving this promise because he chose us to be in this world and to be a witness to love and peace and power in this world. I think of that verse out of 1st or 2nd Timothy that says, you're not given over to a spirit of fear, but to one of love, power, and a sound mind. So there we have it. He chose you as he chose me to live this life, not without difficulties, not without chaos, not without, being confronted with our own stuff. But it is to say that over time with him, realizing that we are chosen, realizing that Jesus chose us as he chose the disciples to follow him, that we can navigate this world that we've been given to live in as a peaceful, prosperous person. So, fear not today. Fear not. You are chosen. God bless you. And we'll